Prisons are tough places to be. I think that's common knowledge really for anyone. How tough, how scary, how dark do they get? Well, you can turn on any documentary you want. You can turn on any depiction of a television show in prison, and your opinion will probably be affected by how that is depicted. But in some cases, it can be very bad. We're talking about right now what's going on in the prison where Richard Allen is staying. Should be in a jail, by the way, because he is not been convicted of a crime, and prisons are typically for that. The county jail is for while you're waiting. But in Delphi, they don't do things quite that way. There's been a lot of allegations of abuse coming out of that prison. Robert Baston claims he has seen Richard Allen being abused and mistreated by Westville correctional officers and staff, so much so he was willing to go and testify about it, but stepped down for his own safety and fear for his own life were the words that he specifically used. Here to discuss what that life is like in prison, and exactly what can be done if this sort of these sort of actions are taking place. Shavaun Scott, psychotherapist and author, joining me. Yeah, I mean, it's we expect a rough life in prison without a doubt, but it doesn't excuse inappropriate, abusive, bad behavior, especially when it comes to the people who are in charge, the guards, the people who are working. If these allegations are in fact true, do they just not have much oversight in most prisons that allow a attitude like this to fester and grow?
It's hard to say because I think prisons differ dramatically.
Hmm.
Certainly from state to state and even within states, you will find, typically federal prisons are much different than state prisons, and the institutions for the criminally insane are very different from regular prisons. And so you've got all these variables. But the facilities that I'm familiar with are primarily on the West Coast, and there are cameras everywhere. Guards are monitored, and that's as it should be. We know that when police wear cameras, that they behave differently when you're being filmed. And so I hope that that's what's happening wherever Richard Allen is being held. And I don't know that it is, but it should be
Yeah,
standard.
I mean, it seems from an outsider looking in, if these sort of allegations are being made, if you're the one running this prison, may want to take a look at that. You may want to make sure these things aren't actually happening because I would imagine that could be quite a liability if proven.
Yes, yes, definitely. And I know that the prisons I'm familiar with, there are staff whose job is just to monitor what's happening on the cameras and to investigate any incident of violence. And it is taken very seriously that they don't allow, or at least they do everything they can to try to prevent this kind of abuse by staff of the prisons. But not every prison is the same.
Why do we have such varying degrees of difference within the prison system? You would think the prison system is a prison system. It should be kind of like McDonald's. It's the same burger you get any
Yeah,
place in our country,
yeah.
but that's not really how it is. Why is that?
State governments, each state, as with so many things, every state does things their own way, and there are differences. And so that's why I think the federal prisons are a little bit more standardized, and people would generally prefer to be in a federal prison than a state prison because of that. And so it's, as far as I can tell, it's just that some states are put more money, have more money
Mhm.
and put more money into the prison system, and they're better funded, and they have a different philosophy.
In the letter that was addressed to the Carroll County Clerk of Courts, Baston, who is the inmate who has said, I'm not going to testify, claims that he had seen Allen being abused and mistreated by Westville correctional officers and staff, which Baston said has affected Allen's health and mental health. So we're looking at that. Mental health, especially when it comes to what a lot of people will go to in this case and say, well, he admitted it. He confessed
Yeah.
on the phone to his wife and to his mom that he did these sort of things. Um, but when you're under that sort of duress and mental stress, I imagine it wouldn't be hard to end up giving out a false confession if you think that it's somehow going to get you into a better place. It's an act of survival at that moment in time.
Yeah, it's hard on one level to imagine confessing to something like that if you didn't do it, but on another level, yes, people have done that before. There have been all kinds of false confessions, well documented. And so when people are desperate, and again, we don't really know the status of his mental health. It's reported to be poor at this point. He certainly does not look like a well man. And, we really need to have things transparent, and we want him to have competent care, and certainly nobody who's incarcerated is entitled to it, Club Med, but you want to feel like people are treated with basic human dignity. And, this is another red flag about this case that is of concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're discovering a lot of things that we assume are happening or have been happening, or standards to which things happen
Right,
don't really
right,
happen
right,
to those sort of standards, and then that's a whole other system that
right.
needs some sort of reform. Speaking of transparency, here I have actually all of the documents that transcribe the conversation that was had behind closed doors with Judge Gull and Richard Allen's attorneys, Mr. Rozzi and Baldwin. I read it in its entirety. It's on the channel if anyone wants to be bored for 30 minutes and hear the whole thing. But I mean, in summary, it pretty much says what we've all been saying, or we've heard rumblings of. Gull does ask them to step down, or they will be publicly scrutinized, humiliated, possibly having some sort of sanctions or other issues take place. It does really feel like she did put them into a corner. It's going to be interesting to see more of what the Supreme Court says on that now that that is out, just in the interest of this case going forward and trying to wipe out so many of these sideshows that have absolutely nothing to do with the death of those two little girls. Where do you think this should go at this point? Bring the old attorneys back in, get a new judge, keep the judge, new attorney, for the sake of justice and Richard Allen and just mental clarity on this? What would you like to
Yeah.
see?
It feels another thing that feels kind of icky and messy at this point, and it
Hmm.
just shouldn't function that way.
Hmm.
Things should be transparent. It seems like if the attorneys are willing to work pro bono, and these are attorneys that he wants, then you don't get into the issue. Well, they have to be court appointed. If they're willing to work pro bono, as they've said they are,
Hmm.
let him have the attorneys that he wants. He's already been working with them. That just seems to be, part of our basic rights to be represented by the counsel that we choose if we can make that happen.
Hmm.
I understand if they're court appointed, that's different. Then the court gets to decide. But it feels like a clean slate with a new judge might work better at this point.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I would.
that would be my vote.
Tend to agree on that, and hopefully they can get somewhere out of the sideshow land on this and back to
Mhm.
finding justice for those two little girls. Hey, it's Tony Brueski. If you want more of our interview with our guests, be sure to check out our podcast, Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Just search that wherever you download podcasts and press subscribe. Also, you can check out our YouTube channel for the full video version of the interviews as well, under the same name, Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Check it out, subscribe, binge, and enjoy. Thanks for watching.